little bit, and yeah, I'd write down 5/8 inch running screeds at base and middle, and permanent 3/4 inch stops at the top in the windows.
Okay.
There's another place to do a running screed, but some of these, like at the base, if you didn't want to do it twice, you could just put it on a 3/4 inch at the beginning and just have the running screed here.
Okay.
That's probably what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
I think it's a
Yeah,
little
I
easier.
think
As
that's
long as you can hold the
3/4
mud
at the
back
bottom.
enough
Right.
for your finished coat.
Yeah.
But having these makes, it seems like it takes more time to do it twice,
Yeah.
but having this at the thickness of your plaster
Yeah.
is going to speed up your plaster by
Uh,
a lot.
I guess we might have to then.
Because replacing this is easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holding back the mud a consistent
That's
eighth of an
not
inch
easy.
is not easy.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
So the other place I would put this,
It's around the windows like that.
well, just at the bottom, because we're going to do a sill,
Yep.
right? So this plaster stop I'm going to put down, this is permanent. For this, now this is less important and it's a lot less surface area, and you could probably put a permanent 3/4 inch here. And you're not going to do it at the top because you're going to round the plaster at the top. So here, though, when you have,
No, we were gonna make it symmetrical all the way around.
Oh.
So it was gonna have the miter and then, the rounded. So it's gonna be the same all the way around. You see what I mean?
okay,
yeah.
I like the idea in theory. You
I
get a
know.
little itty bitty sill. So practically it's not as useful.
I know. No, trust me, I know. I know.
And the other practicality is, see how this can cut way back into here? You're gonna have
Okay.
trouble with this concrete
Really?
there.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. That's a really
A lot
valid
of
point. We
people
might have to
love-
reevaluate.
And it really sets off the sides and the top
Okay.
better to have a sill. And it's a good place for plants. It's a
Okay.
good place for cups. It's a good place for
Oh, yeah.
books.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
a good place for.
Okay.
Coffee. Put your coffee there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
All
yeah.
that stuff.
Good
It's a
point.
functional floor
Good
for
point.
your house.
Yeah.
So what
Okay.
I would do,
Okay.
and you can do whatever you want,
Okay.
is put a stop on. This
Yep.
one could probably be a permanent 3/4 inch stop versus the temporary 5/8 inch stops.
Okay.
Okay.
Because if this is wavy gravy a little bit underneath, as long as it's shy of the 3/4 of an inch, you can finish coat over it.
Right.
And these are just small. This is just the width of the window. But I would hang the windowsill out and create a wing, and then the windowsill cantilevers past this stop, an inch, nice windowsills cantilever a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I'd butt up a finished apron to the windowsill.
Okay.
Nice. Nice.
And it's beautiful. And you get, if your window's only 3 inches deep, you've got 9 inches left,
Yeah.
plus 3/4, plus an inch and a quarter. You got
There you go.
an 11, 12 inch sill,
There you go.
and it's just
Beautiful.
super functional.
Beautiful.
I'm all about the beauty being the function rather than the
Yeah.
beauty being always the
Exactly.
form.
Right.
Let the function be the beauty. That's me. But most modern architects are all into form above function.
Yeah.
And that's where our designer came in. So she was the one who suggested all the way around.
Well, because they have to make it pretty to
Exactly.
get the good portfolio piece to promote
Exactly.
their business. And
Exactly.
I understand it's the invisible hand.
Right.
That is
Right.
the
Right.
invisible hand. Yeah.
Right.
So, but function was always top dog before the invisible hand got involved.
Right.
So I'm into the function. So the apron. So what would be nice is if you take this
Yep.
and get me, from, because we're going to try and wrap this and just drop down from like here down. That's our goal, to
Yep.
put on some mud
Okay.
Sounds good.
today. So just take this 3 feet across there, but also just to mock it up, let's put it, partially
You want
into
to cut a 3 feet piece? and
3
then-
feet of this and another 3 feet for the windowsill,
Sounds good.
and then we'll have a running screed.
My bags are right there too.
And then before we do that, what would be nice at the bottom is to make sure to mock it up a piece of tape, because I would put a piece of tape along the whole bottom too. I'm putting the tape here,
Okay.
I'm putting a tape at the bottom,
Right.
and I'm putting a tape at the top,
Okay.
because these seams leak air,
Yep.
and this doesn't stop it.
No, it won't.
This actually creates 2 places where the air can get in. The air can get in at the top behind the baseboard and underneath So if we put that piece of tape up the back, it's called an airfoil. You're foiling the air. You're like stopping it. It's air fin, airfoil.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So we're gonna want to kind of clear off the floor and just mock it up. I mean, you can rip it all out if you're gonna refinish the floor, but I just want to give you guys a memory piece. That's.
Yeah.
So we just got water.
Water.
We put in 1 gallon of the hydraulic lime,
Okay.
and we put in 1.5 gallons of the sand.
Okay.
But that's not the finish recipe.
Right.
The finish, we'll write it down.
Right.
See, the pen, anybody?
I got a pencil.
Pencil's good. The finish, we're gonna add a little bit of sand at the end to dry it out. I like mixing my mix wet so that it gets really hydrated and all chunks get chunked up.
Right.
So he's got a video, but we're starting with the recipe. We're starting with this 2.5 sand, mason sand to 1 NHL. That's this.
Right.
Natural hydraulic lime. But first, I'm going to start with 1.5 sand. 1 NHL and 1 H2O. So I know this can handle a gallon of water. So what I'm going to do is add all the binder and add all the water.
Ooh, iron.
Yeah, that's from the garden hose. It gets a little bit of that.
So then we'll see how wet it is, because depending on the sand, it can hold more or less water. You might want to add less water next time.
Yeah.
But if we add 1 more bucket of sand to that, that'll be our recipe, and we can augment it with a little bit more dry mix.
Okay.
You know, hold this.
Yeah.
I'm using this table so I don't want to hurt my back.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Sorry.
Drink it here?
Yep. So depending how wet your sand is, this is definitely too wet. I'll show you the test for the base coat. So I can dry it out, and it will hydrate more if I let it sit for 10 minutes.
Right.
So I'm just gonna let it sit before I decide to add more.
Okay.
I like mixing it. Some people don't like mortar. I don't know if you heard this with fast speed drills.
Uh-huh.
Is there multiple speeds on this thing?
I don't think so, no.
A good mud drill is slow RPM, high torque.
Right.
Because there is the potential with too much whipping to get air entrainment
Okay.
in a mortar.
Okay.
So you can either get a pan mixer or use a low RPM, high speed, low speed, high RPM
Yeah.
drill. I never add the lime first because it'll cake at the bottom.
Okay.
You always add the sand first, put the lime on top of the sand. Or add the water first and whip the lime into the water.
Okay.
And then add the sand.
Okay.
But you never add the binder by itself,
Okay.
because then when you add water, it
Yeah.
cakes the bottom edges
Yeah.
and you're not getting your binder. We want this binder fully distributed. So this is 2.5 to 1. And I've never worked with this. I've never worked with this particular sand before.
Okay.
My test for dryness is a little bit of a finger swipe
Okay.
that wants to hold the depth
Of
my finger, but it can move.
Right.
We want it to move, but have the depth of my finger mark.
Okay. So
This
you
moved
say
too
that's,
much.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's
It's
a little
closed.
Yeah.
So the easiest way to remedy that is taking 1/4 of the lime to 2.5 quarters of this, or something like that. Or what I would do is like,
Just get a nice little chow full.
well,
yeah.
scoop of that, and then a few scoops of this. call it this. That's
So you maintain more or less the same ratio.
maintain
Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
ratio. It's easier to pull out of this, so I just did 1 scoop. I'm gonna do just 2 scoops, and then we'll do 5 scoops of that.
Okay.
So that's the same ratio, right? You know, that's where we're at. I know it's gonna need at least that much, so I'm just doing it now. So when you're spraying this kind of stuff, you want it wetter because it sprays it on and it dries
Right.
before you trowel it.
Right.
When you're troweling it, you want it a little stiffer.
Stiffer, yeah.
Because we're going on a 1/2 inch
Right.
to 5/8, it needs to be a little stiffer. You can't. But a good pro stucco or plaster crew would want it wet because it's less work.
Right.
It's easier to move around. But the balancing act between wet and dry is kind of personal to a crew.
Okay.
If it's too wet, it can shrink and crack. However, in this situation, we've got the mesh going in.
Right.
If it cracked a little, we really don't care.
Right.
We got the mesh, and if it shrinks with a good amount of binder in it, and it grips the wall, as long as it's connected to the wall, we don't really care if it cracks a little bit.
Right.
It's actually better if it's gripping.
Right.
So our limiting factor here for putting how much water is added here and how wet it is, can we keep a 1/2 inch on the wall? 'Cause if it's too wet, it's gonna
Yeah, it's gonna fall off. Yeah.
fall off. So that dried it up significantly.
Yeah. Big time.
I haven't mixed it all the way up yet. So, looking at the area that we're doing, we might not need this bucket.
Yeah.
Usually, per bag, at the thicknesses that we're talking about, we talk about 50 square feet per bag.
Oh, okay.
So what are we doing here if we go up that far? We're 3 feet by 5 feet,
Yeah.
15 square feet, approximately maybe.
Roughly, yeah.
So that would be 1/3 of this bag. So we probably should mix that up. I mean, you just throw it on the wall anywhere. It'll be usable. But I was telling David, that some of the idiosyncrasies of lime are, it takes longer to cure, and you want to keep it damp while it's curing. You don't want it to cure too fast. You know how on a hot sunny day and
Oh,
you
yeah.
got concrete, if it dries too
Oh,
fast,
fast, yeah.
it cracks.
Yeah.
It messes up. Same thing with lime, but it's a little bit more sensitive.
Okay.
In 3 days, this is day 1. Tomorrow, let it dry and stiffen up a little. On the 3rd day, once it starts drying out, you're supposed to mist it. 3rd, 4th,
Alright.
5th, maybe 6th, 7th day, 3 to 5 days. The owner typically does it because he doesn't want to pay somebody, or
Right.
he or she doesn't want to pay somebody to come and mist the wall. But a backpack sprayer or a garden mister,
Just a little pump sprayer? Yeah.
pump sprayer to mist the wall and damp it, and it'll turn from, it'll be lightening up as it dries, but it'll turn back dark when you mist it. And if you mist it for 3 to 5 days, it helps, it really cures the wall.
Okay.
And so the back is going to be damp because this is going on wet. I might add a little bit of water, but we might try this first. It's getting to be. I have a pan mixer that does this for me.
Right.
It's a little tile setting mortar mixer. It's
Okay.
a thin set mixer or mortar mixer. That cement mixer might work in a pinch, but it doesn't really do the job.
No.
So this is pretty good.
Okay.
It's loose enough to work. My test is flattening. I usually do this in my mixer, flattening it out and carving a line. And if it moves a little but holds its form, that's a good approximation.
Okay.
This is pretty soft sand. It's holding a lot of lime. It's got a lot of surface area. There's a lot of different particle sizes.
Right.
I think this will be a good ratio. We might, if you were going to take care of this and mist it and keep it warm at 40 degrees for a couple weeks, I'd say we should do some tests
Okay.
and try 2 1/4 to 1 compared to 2 1/2 to 1.
Okay.
But because I don't anticipate you guys heating this space right
Probably
now,
not. Yeah.
and misting it.
Right, no, not on this.
Not
That's
on this.
correct.
So I might suggest that we're gonna do 2.5 to 1 and just stick with that.
Okay.
Just because why, but maybe when you get dried in and conditioned in here, you might do a little spot. I think 2.5 to 1 is fine. You could do 2.25 to 1 and see if it's any better. But
Okay.
again, it's just the base coat, so
Right.
maybe just stick to the 2.5 to 1 and not
Okay.
complicate it.
Okay.
The finish coat I would sample. And there is a company I told you on the phone called Limestrong that's making pre-mixes, colored options for finish coats. And that might be the easiest thing to do on the finish coat. Buy Limestrong's Build.
Right.
That's their product. It's a lime plaster with pumice aggregate that's pozzolanic, that's a little bit hydraulic, but they have a color system.
Right.
We're just selling raw materials and helping people get the base coats on.
Right.
Because there's plenty of people doing premixes for the finish coats, and there's
Yeah.
nobody, and it's not practical to do premixes for the base coat. There's too much material.
Okay.
And it's expensive to ship sand.
Yeah.
You've got sham sand everywhere,
Yeah.
and we're just shipping binder.
Right.
So I'm gonna let this sit, and I'm gonna mix this other one too. I personally would make this a little wetter, just because it will go on a little easier.
Yeah.
But we'll try this first and see, and then you can see the difference.
Okay.
I think it'll be a good sample. So let's add not quite as much water to this one. There we go.
Pour this
Here-
back in here.
Yeah. I'm gonna let you work on that. A little less than a gallon of water plus a gallon and a half, or a gallon of sand.
Okay.
Because this already has a gallon and a half sand and a gallon of lime.
Yep.
And he's just under a gallon of that and a gallon of that.
Yep.
You ready for this? Or were you gonna mix it
No,
again?
let's just look at what you got. So the thing, that's great. This is great. What I want to do is put a piece of tape underneath that. Let's pull that off. We could put a piece of tape underneath this too, but that's getting a little excessive. Because there's air coming in here. And where the plaster ends, there's going to be an air leakage point that gets through this little bit of seam and underneath the concrete bond beam a little bit and out here. So how OCD on the air sealing is really a personal thing
Okay. Got it.
that you have to make. I'm trying to hit the major points.
Yeah.
And to me,
Yeah.
because I've done auditing, energy auditing, and blower door testing.
Yeah.
To me, the major points are the bottom of the walls,
Okay.
the top of the walls, and all the penetration.
Okay. Okay.
This is marginal.
Okay. Got it.
That's me.
Got it.
Talk to some of these other passive
Right.
house consultants, and it's
Yeah.
another story.
Sure.
So he's cutting a piece of the tape, and to stick that tape to the floor is going to need a dust-free,
Right.
flat surface.
Okay.
We don't have that.
Right.
But we're still going to mock it up because we want to keep the idea
Yep.
fresh.
So is this kind of universal tape? Does this go everywhere then, the Sega?
I would use the Sega with the holes,
Okay.
which is we're the only people that have it because
Okay.
nobody else does plaster.
Okay. I see.
Really, as far as the big
Okay.
high-performance supply companies in
Okay.
America that have some Sega. There's a few others that
Okay.
have Sega, but none of
Okay.
them have the holes
Got it.
because we don't do enough masonry
Okay.
buildings and
Got it.
plaster
Got it.
systems. They're just selling for stick framing.
Got it.
So we're the only ones that have the ones with
I see.
holes. And I had to keep some in the United States because they were sending it all back to Europe.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay.
So this holes, yes, because you're doing a plaster system, is
Yeah.
the tape.
Yep.
And if your baseboard was going to be taller,
Mm-hmm.
then this stop that he's putting on,
And
you want this.
But yeah, that's it.
This is not stop. This is for exchanging
This thing's all nuts.
mud into
Yeah.
the wall.
Okay. Right.
You want this to be at the area that you're stopping the air.
Okay.
So you want this to come up past your plaster stop.
Okay.
And this does come in thicker stuff.
Okay.
But for the plaster stop that we currently have, this
Yeah.
is wide enough.
Okay.
So that's the only place you might want a wider tape.
Okay.
I think at the ceiling and at the windows, this is going to be the right
Okay.
one.
Okay.
And this is the smallest we have. So
Tape it behind?
yeah, we're gonna mock this up and just brush it so it might stick with a brush. You have a little whisk broom.
Ah,
Kind of
yeah.
blew my head.
Yeah. And again, if the plaster stuff was held up off the ground, you wouldn't have to deal with the chunky shit. So but this wants to be connected to the floor so that it stops the air.
And then do we untape this right here?
Yep. Let's pull that before we. There's 2 layers. So let's make sure this is stuck first. You can pull the second one too.
So being as that you're the only one that sells it, do you guys manufacture this?
No, this is a Swiss. In Europe, this kind of stuff is so much more common. So all the tapes, as far as I know, in America are coming from Europe right now. As far as these kind of tapes. Now, Henry's and some other American companies are doing some exterior tapes.
Yeah.
But they're not doing much for. It's only European companies, as far as I know, doing interior air sealing tapes.
Okay.
But as soon as we ramp up the industry and the codes,
Right.
the codes are just kicking in on this stuff. This air sealing stuff is just getting online. So there will be stuff made in America.
Yeah.
This is a good business to be in. It doesn't take a lot to make it, and it's really effective.
Yeah. Exactly.
And they're selling them for $60, $70 a roll, or $80 a roll, or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
So do you see how this has come up a little bit past that holy tape component? Ideally, this would not come past the field of the tape. The holes would be above it, like in this condition.
Okay.
So we might want to get you a roll or two of a slightly thicker tape.
Okay.
looking-
You mean wider then?
Wider,
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. And there's actually 2 layers of wood going here, so that this is sticking out is no big deal because you guys still have your baseboard going there.
Right.
But here, you don't want this to be proud of the plaster stop.
Okay.
If this is proud of the plaster stop, because this is the trim, this is the finish.
Uh-huh.
So that's good.
Okay.
So you might have to cut. You know, I see a little drop right there, right, of that tape sticking out.
Oh, I
Right.
see.
I wasn't tight enough with my thing, or razor knife it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if that's a nice window, you don't want to razor knife
Sure.
Right.
it off.
Yeah.
But it's close, and it was probably just because I didn't get the corner. Oh, yeah, I didn't get the corner in quite right, or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is.
So I'm gonna seal this back in here.
Okay.
Get this tape, and then I'm gonna ask you to, Alex, to install this plaster stuff.
What do you want to install it with, screws or what?
Yeah, screws are good. Lath screws are nice.
Which ones?
They're big, flat-headed. Anything big enough for those holes would be fine.
Wait, will these work or should I go get like drywall screws?
No, that's fine.
Oh, so we got something with a small head too.
Do we?
I'm just doing in stick framing on flat sheet goods that we have rollers for this tape to really get a pressure
Right. Exactly.
a pressure connection. But this is
Yeah.
it's gonna be fine. But I would rub it a few times, not just once.
Okay.
I would run your hand a couple times just to
Okay.
make it.
Yep. Okay.
Type S is called air set, and if it stays underwater, it will never set. It will never cure.
Okay.
This will set underwater. That's why it's called hydraulic.
Oh, okay.
Hydraulic and Portland cement is a super eminently hydraulic lime. This is a very mildly hydraulic lime.
Okay.
This is like a very mild cement.
Right.
If I were to use this tomorrow, I could. Past that, it starts getting a little bit too stiff.
Right.
So at the end of the day, if you have an extra wheelbarrow or bucket, if you tuck plastic
That's
around
fine.
it,
Okay.
or plastic and water,
Right.
ideally, you can take it the next day, mix it into your new batch,
Right.
spread it out a little bit, and it's fine.
Sweet.
So it's not setting as fast as Portland
Okay, good.
based mortars.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, that's
'cause
good.
We were working with some stuff that set really fast.
I did cement stucco for a number of years on some wacky houses, and once I got into lime, I said no to every cement job just because I didn't need that kind of stress.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
right. Yeah.
So the lime, you have much more working time.
Good.
And the base
good.
coat, that's really nice, and it doesn't matter where you end. Like you could stop in the middle of that
Oh,
wall,
good.
and you could cover it with plastic. Mist it a bunch, cover it with plastic, and the next day you could work it together and it would disappear.
Great.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
With clay, you could do it for
Right.
like 10
Right,
years because
yeah.
you can rehydrate it. This
Yeah.
you can't rehydrate, but it's slow to set, and if you keep it wet and you cover it with plastic and keep it away from CO2, it'll stay wet and you can work it together the next day.
Nice.
On a finished coat, you might not want to do that.
Yeah, probably
On
not.
a finished coat, you might want to end in a corner or end at a trim piece or
Right.
an interior wall so that you don't get a cold joint
Right.
for your finish.
Okay. Makes sense.
Oh, I like this is a little wetter. I like this one better. So we're gonna let's add a drop of water to that.
Yeah, I just added an extra little splash to that one.
Yeah. The other plaster stop detail that you're gonna have to figure out, other than the floor, the ceiling, and the windows, is interior walls.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would do the same thing. I would put the tape. Ideally, you would put a wide piece of something, could be Tyvek, before the interior walls go on.
Okay.
So it's just a cheap thing. The tape's not cheap.
No. Yeah,
A piece of Tyvek would be cheap.
Yeah.
So, but now that the walls are already there, I would do tape on both sides, and depending on what the finish of that interior wall is, determining the plaster stop. If the interior wall is going to be drywall,
I'm pretty sure it is.
then if you, here, let's mop that up. So where's the leftover here? All I'm thinking about. Hold on, flip. So that plaster, depending on, I would put the tape on and I would put this on and dye the drywall to the plaster.
Okay.
But you could go the other way. You could put the base coat on. Well, you need this for the base coat.
Right.
If you did
Right.
a wood stop that was wood, 3/4 of an inch this way and less than the drywall thickness this way,
Okay.
it would disappear behind the drywall. And
Yeah, and I think we're using 5/8 drywall here, yeah?
That's for the ceiling.
That was for the ceiling?
Yeah, not for the walls.
Yeah.
The walls are usually half inch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I think these walls are going to be 5/8 just
really?
to do the fire code. Yeah.
well, I'll let
Just
you
a
guys
couple.
decide what kind of stop you want to do here. You could do a narrow piece of wood
Right.
that's a 1/2 inch thick or less by 3/4 of an inch for the plaster thickness, and then it would disappear behind the drywall, and that would be flat for your drywall. And
Right.
It would almost disappear. This, your plaster, a 1/2 inch away even has a little, so you might have a little shadow line.
Right.
And either, the nice thing about the wood, if you did it thicker, you could have a trim transition, you could frame it differently.
Right.
Or you could carry the finish coat across onto the drywall. There's lots of different ways that could look. But
Okay.
there's just an understanding that what I'm trying to relay is that this needs to be air sealed
Right.
more than anything. And then,
Yeah, but why would it need to be air sealed if it's just an inside wall?
Interior wall?
well, these seams on this side of this plaster stop is getting air here. Unless there's mud carrying
It makes
across.
sense.
If they're changing materials and you don't have the finish coat traveling across,
Right.
then you have an air leakage.
Right,
point.
right.
A significant one because you have seam.
Yep. Yep.
So I think we're pretty ready to put some mud on here. And there should be one person ahead of the plaster team just like dialing
Right.
in the prep.
Right.
It's like
Yeah,
it's a
that'll
job.
help a lot, yeah.
It's a job, and it's usually the person that's doing the mixing because he's got a little extra time, and he's just staying ahead of the people, double checking, and maybe he's doing a little cleanup on the backside. You know, there's a front, and it's kind of like a locomotive, right? The whole system goes around the building like a train. And there's the prep person, sometimes there's the misting person, because on a finish coat, you have to mist the wall a ton. Because otherwise, it's gonna suck the moisture out of that finish coat so fast that you can't finish it.
Okay.
So the second way to do that is to do a double back finish coat, where you put on a thin coat that's wet, and it gets dry pretty quickly, but
Fast.
you're doubling back with a second finish pass, like 2 credit card thicknesses.
Right.
On top of each other. And the back, the first one keeps the second one wet
Okay.
from the back side. So it's either misting or double back on the finish coat. But the locomotive added metaphor is valuable because you got a prep person, maybe they're misting, they're keeping ahead of the first installer of mud.
Right.
And that installer of mud needs to be your best troweler. They're getting mud on the wall, maybe with these temporary plaster stops, these running screeds. They're working with a buddy, and they're just getting it on the wall. And then you have another person or two behind them, maybe touching it up, getting it a little closer to level, and dropping the fiberglass mesh.
Okay.
And then you have another person behind them
Yeah.
working the mesh in with a wood float, or
Yeah.
it's the same person.
So one question I have is like, so you know, like say we're running a whole roll of tape, and then they're overlapping. How much overlap do you have to have on the tape?
An
Or
inch would
can
be
it-
fine.
And it, so it has to have overlap, or can it just be butted up?
It could be buttered up. I mean,
Oh, so
the
that
air
doesn't really
leakage
matter.
left, as long as it's sticking, you know.
Gotcha.
This is not a flashing detail. This is not a waterproofing detail.
Yeah.
This is an air leakage detail. So if you overlapped it, you would definitely not have any air leakage.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it just even just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's kind of clear this away and maybe put a piece of plastic there.
That's hard. All
So I'm just going to show you this sample here.
Oh, I like it.
So this is it's the same mesh but a smaller
Yeah.
size opening. Base coat,
I like.
second base coat, finish coat.
Right.
This
Oh,
is
the
their
finish coat's
premixes.
real thin, huh?
Yeah, these are premixes that we're not importing because we don't want to import sands.
Right.
And some of these have cork aggregate. This is on cork, original
Okay.
steamed cork. They've got fancy stuff over there. It's really cool, but
Nice.
we just don't need all that stuff all the time. But so, you know how I said you did sanded primer on the drywall if you wanted to carry a finish coat on the drywall?
Right.
That's what I've been doing for 20 years. In Europe, they don't do that. They will take like a sticky latex burdened thin set type.
So in Europe, they don't really use drywall, huh?
No, they do, but they do a lot of plaster over drywall. And they use drywall, paperless drywall with the fiberglass facing versus the paper,
Okay.
like our commercial buildings. do.
Yeah.
Because it's way more durable and it won't get damaged with moisture. But what they'll do, because the plaster installer, never knows if the drywall installer did a great job. And I've retrofitted buildings like this, like acoustical tilings on the ceiling. And
Oh,
I wanted
yeah.
to plaster over acoustic tiles. So I'll go through it, I'll staple the shit out of it and get it solid. And then I'll scrape a thin set mixed with lime plaster, half and half,
Okay.
like this.
Right.
And I embed mesh in it.
Right.
Then it locks it together like bomber.
Okay. Cool.
And then I come back with a second finish coat. And that's what they just trained my Australian plaster master buddy. That's what they do on all drywall. They don't mud and tape the seams of drywall. They put the drywall on or the drywall alternative. They take a thin set, they basically mud the whole thing,
Right.
put in mesh over the whole thing, and then come back with the finish coat.
Okay. Cool.
Rather than mudding and taping the seams. So that's kind of what they're showing here.
Right.
And that's the bomber. There's only a couple people that probably would do that in America just because it's not our culture.
Okay.
But I'm just giving you the principle
Yeah.
to understand. And who knows, it might not even take more time because you're not dealing with all the mud and tape at the seams.
Yeah.
You're just mud and taping the whole thing, basically. I just wanted to show that to you.
And we're gonna carry this product all the way up, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're going to need drywall backing and
Yeah, we're gonna
The
use
drywall.
What's that? product we're
The
gonna
cement
use?
board.
The cement board. Yeah.
Yeah.
well, here, but you need to carry the
Yeah.
ceiling
Yeah.
across
Yeah.
first. Because you only have to go as far as the ceiling.
Right. Right.
So I'm going to show you this stuff too. You've used metal diamond lath before.
Yeah.
This is the alternative to diamond lath. It's a fiberglass lath.
Oh, nice.
So if you really wanted grip on your you don't need this on this.
Right.
Because this is got plenty of grip.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But what you might want this on is here.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Where the concrete is?
Okay.
Yep. And all the way across here. Instead of metal, you could use metal too.
Right.
Okay.
But this is the alternative. I can tell you the name. It's called Permalath 1000. BASF has it. It's not cheap. It's hard to get, but it's never going to rust, and it's less bloody. The diamond lath cuts you up and creates.
Oh yeah, man.
It's
yeah.
it's heinous to work with, and this is not. And this will last longer.
Okay.
It'll never rust.
Yeah. Nice.
So, I would also consider using it over your hardy backer because
Okay.
hardy backer doesn't have very much tooth,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
you're hanging 3/4 of an inch of mud
Yeah.
on
Right.
not enough tooth.
Yeah.
So-
And how do you install that? How do you secure that to the cement board?
Lath screws like at the
Okay.
corners.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Just something, pull it tight.
Okay.
Yeah,
not,
get it all
not
nice.
staples. Not staples.
Well, if it was plywood, I'd use staples.
Okay.
But I couldn't. I don't know. I've never tried blasting
Okay.
staples through. hardy
I don't know.
backer.
Yeah, made. Yeah.
Probably wouldn't work. Okay. I
No.
don't know.
Probably not.
Okay.
So, but I use a lot of pneumatic 7/16 crown staples. If this was on any wood, I would attach all those plaster
Right.
wood stops with 7/16 crown staples. If this was going over plywood and 2 layers of tar paper, that's an alternative to the hardy backer.
Okay.
Okay.
You could do plywood and 2 layers of, and then
Oh.
you can staple it on.
Oh, maybe we can think about that.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
No.
That's what the stucco code is for
Okay.
exterior stick frame stucco is 2
Okay.
layers. It used to be 1 layer of tire paper and chicken wire, but 2 layers is better,
Right.
and because it has a
Oh
slip
yeah.
joint
Yeah.
behind it.
Exactly.
And then this is better than metal, but you could do 2 layers of tar paper and metal,
Okay.
2 layers of tar paper in this,
Okay.
or.
Great. Great.
But the reason why I would consider hardy instead of wood
Yeah.
and tar paper is the suction.
Yeah.
So hardy is closer to this,
Okay. I see.
meaning it can absorb and release moisture.
Yeah.
Right.
Drywall or plywood with primer on it or
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
tar paper on it, which stops moisture,
Yeah.
is different.
Right.
And it's not absorbing and releasing moisture
Exactly.
the same way. So you might, if you had a humidity,
Yeah.
if you had a high humidity environment,
Right.
like 6 people having a dance party up here,
Right.
right? 30 people having a dance party,
Yeah.
too much cooking,
Right.
pasta pot boiling like crazy,
Yeah.
too many, a flood, the shower,
Yeah.
too many
The
showers.
showers, all that. Yeah, endless possibilities.
This ghosting, I haven't seen this on the interior as much, but I've seen on the exterior different humidity where there's different
Yeah.
surfaces with
Yeah.
this type of stucco ghosting different colors because
Oh, right.
it's absorbing and
Yep.
releasing moisture differently.
Yep.
Okay.
So the
Exactly.
closer that is to this,
Exactly.
less likely.
So cement board might be better.
Yeah.
More
Okay.
might be
Got
better.
it.
yeah.
We'll go cement board.
And you know, what? And tar paper smells funny too.
Okay.
you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Cement board. We'll go cement board.
But this is called Permalath 1000. I would use it instead of metal if
Okay.
if I could get it.
Okay.
And you could probably get it around here.
Yeah, probably save a couple bloody knuckles.
I already got some bloody knuckles.
Yeah.
So I was telling, do you want to take out the chainsaw and whack off this corner a little bit?
Alright.
You can try out that little green chainsaw.
Oh, nice.
We only use chainsaws for cutting blocks. I mostly tell people to get one of these at a pawn shop for $50 because you're gonna beat it up
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
and get a couple of chains and rotate them out if you need to. If you're building a whole house, get them sharpened. If you know how to sharpen a chainsaw blade, do it on site. If you don't, give it to
You want this just like more flat right here?
Yeah, I was just thinking about a little bit more round because the
Round
more
where?
the
Square it
more
off.
we cut this corner, the more light that comes in.
Well, yeah.
So there's a screw here. Be careful.
Because it's gonna.
Oh, that screw, that's the metal screw, yeah. It's supposed to be. It's a little drier at the bottom.
Yeah, I always try to work the bottom up.
And you can really break buckets like this, too.
Really?
This paddle is way better than the flat.
The flat ones, yeah, the flat
With
ones
the
I
corner.
can see, yeah. Okay, so try to go further rounded.
Yeah. That's looking really nice. See, it's got my
Yeah.
my little My little test here is, cutting a line, holding its form, moving a little bit
Yep.
without closing all the way.
Yep.
It seems creamy enough, although it's not too creamy.
Right.
Because this is a thick plaster. The thinner your plaster, theoretically, the creamier it could be because it's not going to shrink in this dimension as much. Because it doesn't. This, because it's half an inch thick, can shrink. So we need more sand.
Right.
The way I explained to them earlier, plaster. One second, Alex. Let me just explain this to Joe's. The matrix of a plaster is like a bunch of sand particles stacked on each other,
Right.
like a rock wall.
Mm-hmm.
You want the sand particles touching each other, and that gives you compressive strength.
Okay.
The binder, the lime in this case, could be clay, could be cement, is like mortar in a stone wall.
Okay.
You want to stack stones that are touching each other, so there's a lot of them, and that's giving you strength. You want to stack stones that have angles, so they're like kind of like flat stones interlocking versus round
Right.
stones. You never want to use rounded sand
Okay.
for a strong plaster or
Okay.
stucco, because that's like beach sand and
Right.
ocean sand has been tumbled and rounded.
Yeah, exactly. It's all
So
around it.
quarried sand is way better
Okay.
for the
Interesting.
angles.
Yeah, that's
I didn't
good.
And
catch
more
that
sand,
before.
as much sand as you can get in there, but still having the working characteristics you want for
Right.
mud, and the strength that you need with the binder just to make it lock together. All the little spaces between the sand particles ideally get filled with smaller sand and fine sand and even clay film.
Mm-hmm.
That, like a good mason sand has the whole spectrum.
Okay.
That fills in all the spaces.
Right.
A non-well graded sand doesn't.
Yeah, it leaves those spaces.
It
Right.
leaves those spaces.
Okay.
So these locals are great about. These look similar, and
Similar. Yeah, that one might have dried up a little more, but not too much.
you can compare them in your hand.
Not bad.
So, and lime is highly alkaline. So, if you let it sit on your skin
Yeah.
and it rubs against your skin, especially on like the cuff of a glove, or
It's gonna irritate you.
if you have open wounds, it
Yeah.
can really irritate. I have a little open wound right here and it's stinging right now. Just
Okay. Yeah.
the alkaline, the base burn.
Yeah.
So wearing gloves, a lot of people will put latex gloves underneath
Yeah.
gloves like this, or use vinyl gloves
Okay.
if they're messy. The people trained in Japan, they're so perfect, they never touch the mud.
Yeah.
They've got every tool and every system where they the mud never touches their skin or their body or the ground, and they clean their trowels after every use.
Yeah.
And it's a different world.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then touching the wall, rubbing it with your fingers.
Oh, yeah.
I've gotten burns on all my fingers. I've gotten
Yeah. Eat away at your skin
burns
real
on
quick.
my wrists. So the base, it's a base burn. It's a highly alkaline material, so it probably wouldn't affect you as young, stout people until it's a rainy day and you've got sand and lime scuffing this, and at the end of the day you go home, suddenly both your wrists are like scarred and bloody.
Yeah.
So it's not a big deal if you're cautious at all, but just to keep it in mind
Okay.
to protect yourself from the base. And I think we're pretty ready
Yeah.
over here. He whacked.
Oh, I got a whacker.
Oh, he didn't.
yeah,
Oh,
he's
he
gotta
was
whack
waiting.
it.
He's gonna whack it still. So he's gonna whack. And I don't think we need to whack all the way
All
up,
the way up,
but you
just
can.
A couple bricks.
Yeah, because we're only gonna go to here.
Okay.
And also, if you do have it, you can do a vinegar rinse, so you bring it back to the pH balance.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's
so
a
do you
good
ever
idea.
install this stuff also, or no?
A little bit,
So
yeah.
you do construction?
No. But I follow my brother around and I like to let
There you go.
I'm just moving this so you can get that.
Right. Yeah. No. It's hard to find them.
Yeah.
Nice. That looks great.
Yeah, it really does. Good job, Alex.
Oh, it's a sculpture project. I've done a lot of straw bale where you can do wacky, beautiful stuff.
I think it's pretty nice how people with chainsaw can like carve out those like pictures and stuff.
Yeah, like
Pretty sick to do it.
little bears and little eagles. And stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice and broken.
Yeah,
The
I mean, it has
edges-
it. Yeah, here, he'll
Oh,
show
I
you.
see.
The edges aren't sharp.
I see.
Yeah.
Got it.
But if you do a wood float over the mesh, everything's going to disappear as far as lines
Right.
and stuff. And then if you do
Yeah.
a sponge at the finish,
Yeah.
those
Okay.
edges are not going to
Okay.
be.
Got it.
So yeah, preparing, and if you had a big hole or gap, I'd plug it with mortar,
Yeah.
cement lime type S
Oh,
mortar,
okay.
just to anything big. Just because it'll dry
Yeah.
and it'll be ready for you to. The whole surface will be more equal.
Yeah.
So Joseph, what would you suggest over here?
Right. You see
Yeah.
how we have. big
This is
difference here?
one of our worst areas. So how would you suggest we tackle this?
Oh, good question. Well, I could see a couple of things.
This was all pushed out to get the this nice and ready for the roof.
Well, as long as the structural engineer is okay with it, this has got 2 inches of composite, so you could grind this off
Okay.
to flatten it out a little bit. And what I would tend to think is kind of splitting the difference a little bit between, what plane are you trying to go for? 'Cause
Right.
I think we're
If
gonna
you go
go
for
off
this,
plane, and then we're gonna have to take it off a little that way too. I think in order to get it to come out this way to match.
yeah, but then you're going to end up with 3 inches of mud up here.
Yeah, you are. So yeah, this is one of our biggest.
So I would try and because the bottom is similar to this. Like this
Yeah.
is all the
Yeah.
same. This is tilted over.
Yeah.
I mean,
They not put on those like wood pieces when they were pouring.
what
it?
I would do is I would take whatever leftover mud we have today and throw it up there, or put cement lime mortar up there.
Yeah.
a couple different times.
Fill it all in.
with the mesh.
All right.
But you don't think having like a thick layer of that mud is bad?
It's pretty heavy.
Yeah, it's pretty good stuff.
It's pretty. The cement. I would leave this for the last 3/4 of an inch and use cement lime just because it'll cure fast. This takes a lot longer to cure.
Okay.
I would use a cement lime mortar and leave it and use a scratcher, and every time you do a different layer as you build it, I wouldn't go more than 5/8 at a time. But like you're scratching some horizontal grooves to catch the next layer.
Yeah.
Now the whole thing is hanging out off of this texture, which is a little bit of a crapshoot as far as like 3 inches of mud in a seismic condition hanging on this. So if you really wanted to secure that 3 inches out here, you could do a number of things. You could screw some screws, riddle it with screws that are cantilevered out that's hooking on a little bit. I've done that a lot with earth and materials.
Okay.
Like screw it, because this is 2 inches. You could screw in a 4-inch screw, cantilevered out 2 inches and 2 inches, and pack the mud around it.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
Yeah, I like that.
And the Australian guy, James, who you guys aren't meeting, what he would do, and I've done 3 inches of plaster on straw bale. Some people want it. Some people just end up with it because their walls aren't even.
Right.
If
You've seen that kind of stuff before?
what?
You've seen that kind of stuff before?
Not with Faswall as much as straw bale, but
Oh, gotcha.
but yeah. I mean, you can also use stuff like this on Faswall.
Right.
You could hack this down a little bit maybe, but that's a lot. A cupped grinding wheel might.
Yeah, we
Tear it
got
apart.
we got some grinding wheels and stuff.
Okay.
So just try to float it out pretty
Yeah.
much.
I would
Okay.
float. That's the easiest
Okay.
thing. But the other thing you could do is take something like this permalath,
Right. Find our place.
and if you staple this, this is a revolutionary thing for me because this Australian guy showed me. We were building out 3 inches of mud, and I would have taken 4 coats to do it.
right.
But he's like, he stapled this onto the ceiling. He put a ton of mud on it with straw on it, really long straw or horse manure, a lot of fiber, and you can build out.
Right.
If you put fiberglass, fine, but straw is better because it can be longer, or hemp, or
Right.
whatever. And you put it in your mortar, you could build out 2 inches in one pass.
Right.
And then, but it's heavy; it's going to fall off the
Oh
wall.
yeah.
Unless you staple this to the ceiling and you hang it, like he's doing with your all thread.
Okay. Right. Exactly.
For the structural, you're hanging this, and you're only coming down to here. So, if you hung something like this from the ceiling, you can put 2 inches on it once and bring it out fast.
Okay, great. Good information.
So I think we're pretty ready over
Yeah.
here. Let's find. Well, I have these are the only application trowels I really have.
Okay.
And if we could find a couple small pieces of plywood to put mud on. I'm gonna test which one is better. This side or this side?
I'm gonna see.
Oh, this probably is better. I'm just gonna. Stuff that in there like that. Before I release the backer, so it's easy, because otherwise this starts sticking everywhere.
How big a
Makes
piece did you want? Like something smaller?
Those, this is good. Yeah, and maybe make one more, so we have 2 of them.
That's good.
And then this one, the same thing.
Yeah. But I didn't. You don't have to wrap it in the back.
Okay.
This is extra. I just happen to have that fold. And this is just better than diamond lath. Like you could cover that with diamond lath or fiberglass lath to get it more grip. It's probably fine if you didn't do anything and you're just cantilevering the
Yeah.
plaster.
Yeah.
Because it's got this embedded mesh helping it cantilever.
Okay.
It's probably fine not to do that.
Okay.
But I just want to try. So
Sure.
we'll have a little area here
Yeah.
that's
There we go.
not, so we can
Yeah.
see the
We'll,
difference.
we'll find out for sure.
Because I've never gone over this with this tape before.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, really?
No, I've just used
Right.
2-inch strips of metal lath
Okay.
when I wanted to do it.
Okay.
But that's bloody.
Yeah.
Hard to cut.
It is. It's a pain in the neck. Yeah. So.
So here, let's use. Here, I'll let you guys be the hawk holders. There's these. These are a bricklaying kind. This is a bricklaying trowel.
Yeah. I got more experience with those trowels.
No, but this isn't a trowel. This is my scooper.
Yeah.
But this was. They have these at the store. They have also what's called a Baltic scoop, which is
Okay.
gets a bigger scoop. It's more of a cup. And you might ideally wet this down a little bit if you're using wood as your hawk
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
a
Because
metal
it
hawk.
just sucks the moisture right
It
over
sucks
there.
the moisture. I'll just give you 2. Leave that there. Bring it back. So one of them, you get the Japanese trowel.
So you just kind of like apply it like.
It's a knack. You kind of got to get in tune with your body. I apply it a certain way, and other people that have, and when you're not really pro, putting on 1/2 inch at once is tough.
Yeah. Just putting on any.
So I would get it on thin, and you guys can get a feel, and then I'll show you an application where I do it, and then get a feel. And typically when you're doing this sequence, you're starting at a top corner and working one direction like a wave, like a diagonal across the wall. Like if I were starting this room, I'd start there
And work.
and I'd work at an angle where the top person's working and the bottom is following at this kind of an angle across the room like a wave.
Okay.
And you're working that way you don't mess up anything below you when you're working above. You finish the top, just
Okay.
like painting, you finish the top first before
Okay.
the bottom,
Okay.
especially in the finish coat.
Okay.
And then you also minimize your amount of wet edge, right?
Okay.
Instead of like having a spot here and a spot here and a spot here where all the edges are wet, and you're
Okay.
trying to keep all those edges wet so it
Yeah.
doesn't have a cold joint.
Okay.
You're minimizing your wet edge
Okay.
as you cross the room.
Okay.
And the amount of edge that you have to manage, because every edge you have, you're trying to keep wet as you move across the room. So the least amount of wet edge is the least amount of managing
Okay.
and stress.
Okay.
So yeah, learning the flick of a trowel, show you a little feel. We can scrape that up. That's great. Or you can do it at that time. I have a bunch of it. But I normally have a nice handle on your hawk. The Japanese have it one way. This is more of an American trowel. We're not going much higher than this, but I like to keep my hawk.
Just flat like that. And that's the end of this.
And some people go up and then to the side so you don't taper
Right.
it.
Seems like it's a little quicker too.
Yeah, a lot quicker.
To what?
This method. You know, you're applying more in a faster fashion.
That's getting close right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But if you don't do it well, and it's a good skilled plasterer would call me white knuckling it, because I'm putting a lot of strain on my wrists
Right.
and my knuckles. You might pin your fingers like that if you are trying to do a skilled plaster, and I haven't been plastering much lately too, is more letting shaping it with
Right.
a light touch,
Okay.
and that takes years to develop.
Yeah.
The heavy muscle, like throw your shoulder out and throw your elbow out and throw your wrist out, is
That's
American.
yeah.
Right.
Without a generation before them telling me you're going to ruin your
Your body.
body. So I overdid it. I didn't have any elders teaching me, and I didn't do enough troweling at a certain point to nail it, and then I got into other things. But I mean, if I got back into it for a little while, I get to touch a little better, but I haven't been.
So what about these corners here? When you're
So we kind of put it on your front.
right. All right.
So that's
There we
getting
go.
close to my finished thickness.
All right.
That's what we're going for, and then
Right,
you're gonna be
bring it
cleaning
up.
that out at the end. But when you're getting it on the wall, when you're the first person putting the mud on the wall, you're the locomotive.
Right. You just keep going.
You got to get it on and get going.
Right.
So then somebody else is coming back in, maybe right before mesh, and touching it up a little. But you're the locomotive. You got to get it on, get it out of the way. You're not cleaning.
Keep going. Yeah.
And then the rounding is fun, because what often, if you're getting a nice round, you kind of, the mud is giving you the shape as much as you're sculpting with the chainsaw. You just got a basic armature going here,
Yeah.
just a bulk shape. But the mud, we've got 3/4 of an inch of mud between here and here. And what the pros do that I'm not great at is, if you want this curve to be really perfect, like similar all the way up, what you do is you keep this coming out, and you keep this coming out, and then the plaster will show you where the curve is.
Yeah.
You don't try and make the curve. Does that make any sense? It's
No, it
like the
does.
geometry of it. This plane comes out and makes that curve to a certain point. This plane comes out, and you'll end up with a ribbon to fill in at the end. You don't even touch the corner till you get this straight and this straight. And that's my buddy James telling me that. I was busy all trying to sculpt the
Right,
whole thing,
right. Yeah.
and it took me forever. And it wasn't perfect at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Huh.
And he came in and said, forget the curve. Get your lines straight. Get your plane straight.
Right. Right.
And then the curve will work itself out.
Got it.
A piece of mesh right now,
Okay.
or a couple of pieces of mesh to drop down.
Sure.
It's the right size.
Okay.
We might be able to see if we could work it in. We don't have the right wood float with us.
Okay.
So
Okay.
somebody's got to get a wood float,
Okay.
and if they want to, get it tomorrow morning and come in and try and work
Oh.
this just as a
okay.
practice.
Oh, I see. Sure.
Work. Yeah, after your first day, you'll feel a lot better about like getting mud on the wall. And if this is a little wetter, it'll go on easier, but you won't be able to build out as thick.
Right.
And that might be a thing to mess with, because thick mud takes
Yeah.
muscle.
Yeah.
So wetter mud. We can
Yeah.
we can add a little water to this right now and see how it goes for you.
Yeah.
We're not trying to build it out necessarily 5/8. We'd be okay with half an inch.
Yeah.
water you add.
Okay,
'Cause a little goes a long way.
okay.
Yeah, it sure does.
So Joseph, what was the reason that you don't recommend misting the Faswall prior to?
I do like to mist it sometimes if the
Sometimes?
conditions require. If it's really hot and sunny out.
Oh,
it's
okay.
gonna cook.
I see.
It's going to cook on you, and you want
Got
to
it.
slow it down a little
Got
bit.
it,
In this
got it.
condition,
Okay,
there's plenty of moisture in here, and you'll
Got
get
it.
more suction. Like
Got it.
the lime
Okay.
and the fines of the plaster will get
Okay.
sucked in better
okay,
when
got
it's
it,
dry.
got it. Would it typically take, let's just start with experienced people to do this whole structure here. How long do you think it would take?
Just the inside here.
Yeah,
I mean, James and his leadership
yeah,
would probably plaster this in 2 or 3 days
2 or 3 days, wow.
for the base coat, and then 2 or 3 days for
Okay,
the finish.
okay.
And you could theoretically, although this isn't what I've done or James has done historically, but
yeah.
the Europeans have no problem with this hydraulic lime is
Yeah.
you can do it 3 days and then double right back over with the
Okay.
finish coat.
Okay. Okay.
At a certain point, you don't need to work it, and you can just run the risk of creating suction and pulling it off the wall. And you're just trying to get it all close enough, and then the mesh and the wood float will flatten it all out.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Overlap questions? Does it just make sure that your tensile strength is continuous for crack prevention?
I think it's gonna be fine.
And I also wouldn't really do a finish coat until the building's been heated. for 2
Okay.
months.
Okay. Got it.
Because everything is moving
Okay.
and shrinking a little bit
Yep,
and shifting
yep, okay.
until it's been settled down.
Okay. Okay.
That's my preference, but
Sure.
your production schedules sometimes.
Sure. Yeah. We're not under a product. We're fine.
But done.
Yeah. No. You bet. I think we're making good progress. It actually looks kind of neat, just like that. That
I know,
texture.
right?
Yeah.
I've done a couple jobs where I just put thin coats on and use the jointing tool
Okay.
to outline the block shape, so you end up looking like with a cut
Really?
stone
Yeah.
castle wall.
Yeah.
It
Right.
takes a lot less material.
Yeah.
That is a reality, an option.
Okay.
You wouldn't use nearly all your lime,
Yeah.
and you would hardly have to deal with plaster stocks in that.
Okay. Is that right?
Like an 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch.
Yeah.
But then it'd be really hard to deal with stuff like this
Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay.
without looking really wacky.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and it's nice to get something on the wall as fast as possible and then fill this out
Yeah.
to within an 1/8.
So are we gonna be using that other bucket then too right now?
Yeah, it's ready to go.
I was gonna mix it up a little more.
Yeah, I just hit it. But-
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it should be good.
Oh, okay.
So is there a tool to like sand this stuff down? Or you don't sand it down?
You can grind it down once it cures a little bit.
Oh, really?
You can scrape it off if you really hit it with a hammer or back of the hand or something, but it's not much. I mean, some people will rasp it. There are grinding tool like trowels made up with metal lath. You can make your own rasp and rasp it down a little. And tuck wheel.
Because I know like with Stocko, there's a sanding thing to just sand it down nicely, edge it
Yeah.
up. But this isn't like
You often use a sponge. My experience with stuff is you kind of use a damp sponge as the way to sand it,
Oh, gotcha.
or a sponge float.
Okay.
I'm just trying to flatten this bottom out a little, and then I'll try and put in this mesh.
Okay. You're gonna put the mesh in. Okay. Good.
So that starts getting a little bit flatter. It's a little
Yeah.
thin in here.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to pick the mud off the floor and put it in the bucket and add a little water, you can
Reuse it.
use it. We're gonna probably run out. Might help me shape this a little bit. But when you go back and you're preparing that edge for the finish coat, ideally before you put in the mesh, this is dialed in so it's 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch pretty consistently. It's hard to clean out after the fact. When you watch James with a trowel, like it's like you're watching an art form,
Right.
or anybody who's done this for many years.
Yeah, I bet you he. Yeah, I can only
Yeah.
imagine.
They're just one with the trowel.
Right, it's like a samurai sword, right?
Yeah.
So this is like an inch thick right here.
Yeah.
So instead of adding more mud, I'm just going to try and move it over. But whenever you're trying to move mud, these kind of with the wood floats,
Are probably the best thing.
because they work more like a plow, except that this one's really goobered up. It's catching the mud instead of scraping across the surface.
So is it bad to have like around the windows like these metal things connecting right by each other?
It's not pretty because that's a finished detail.
Yep. So you'd say like run it one piece, full piece?
That would be the way.
Okay.
That would be the way. And whenever you get those holes of fallen mud, putting on wet mud really fills them in better than trying to pick up mud off the floor or
Right.
use dry mud out of the bucket. When you go back over and you fill in some fallen mud spots,
Wet mud.
wet mud is. You can take a mister bottle and mist this up, and then it'll move really,
There we go.
really nice.
There we go.
If it's feeling dry, it's been sitting on the wall. See, this wet mud right here is way more workable. We were working with a little bit too dry mud, and then the Faswall sucked the moisture out of it.
Yeah. that's-
Ah,
sucks
yeah,
it
there we
right
go.
out of it.
Yeah, good point.
It's not good for my hands.
No.
The other thing about a nice sandy texture is it cures better. More CO2 is getting in there.
We could do something
So
like that,
be-
right, Joe?
Because
We'll try to get the nice quotes and stuff like for each of us.
there's a plaster supply house in Seattle called Salmon Bay. Stucco and plaster supply, Salmon Bay Construction Products. They're in
Okay.
North Seattle. Evergreen might have some concrete supply stores might have some, but the only stucco plaster supply house I know of is down in Seattle, Salmon Bay.
Okay.
But there's probably something up here. I just don't know it.
Yeah.
So this feels thin here. So when James puts it on, or his crew, all this goes on at the same thickness approximately. So it's a lot faster. I'm reworking this a few times just to try and get it somewhat close to flat.
I keep hearing Tommy up there. It's tripping me out.
I'm just going to try and get a little bit more below this window here, and then.
So what made you very interested into going into like whole details with the line?
People were asking for it in my little bubble of a world, in the natural and healthy building world. And people wanted it, but there was nobody that knew how to do it. And so it kind of like it was an organic process of.
It wasn't more like you were like working and then coming out of high school, your dad's like, well, come work with me. And then
No,
you guys, like,
I went to school to be an
Okay.
investment banker.
Really?
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh. That's,
Not really, but maybe work on the Chicago Board of Trade. My dad wanted me to be a stockbroker or something.
oh my gosh.
I need much water. It doesn't. It's close already.
Right.
But a little bit of damp mud, sometimes skimmed across the top. If it's too dry, can really help work it in.
Got it.
Do we have
Okay.
to hide the mesh or can it be exposed a little bit?
It could be exposed a little bit, but it's nice if it's right below the surface. Like you're pushing. You should put a little.
You probably want it
Put a little
embedded.
pressure or put a little mud on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would skim a little bit of mud on top. It's just easier.
Yeah. I love the curve, by the way. I like it far better than the sharp edge.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, unless somebody was really trying to go for a mission style or modern, really modern.
Like I said, I'm a non-linear guy. I like curves.
So if you do want to see how this cures,
Yeah.
keep this at 40 degrees or above
Okay.
and mist it in
Okay.
3, 4, 5, and 6
Okay,
days.
you got it.
Otherwise, you can just rip it off.
Yeah.
But what'd be a fun experiment is
Yeah.
if you didn't do anything in
Yeah.
this moist,
Yeah.
at this temperature,
Right.
see what happens.
Yeah,
'Cause
sure.
I've always went a little extreme in my diligence to make it cure well because I didn't know what would happen
Right.
if it didn't.
Sure,
Well.
sure.
So I was